Today we're going over how to do an esterification reaction starting from an acid chloride and an alcohol. And one of the things that you'll notice about acid chlorides is that they have an intense smell. And so we're going to do everything that we possibly can in the fume hood. And so we have this set up inside the fume hood. Now, to make sure that all of the students here can get their setups in the fume hood at the same time, we'll have to share the condensing water setup, right? Because we only have 2 of these faucets and 2 sinks. So I'm going to walk you through how to hook up the plumbing for this process. So we have 1 tube coming from the cold water outlet, or the faucet, and that runs in the bottom of the first condenser here, the bottom of it, right? And then out the top of the condenser, where this would normally just run into the sink, because we're going to have multiple setups in the same fume hood, we're actually going to just run that one over into the next person's inlet, right? So it's going to go out here and in here. And then from there, since we have 2 setups today, we're going to run this one out and into the sink. But if we had more, we could run more in here and on down the line until we have all of those set up. Okay, so far we have put 7 milliliters of our acid chloride in this 50 milliliter round bottom flask, and we're letting it cool down because this reaction is exothermic. Same thing over here. Now in this case, we've added benzoyl chloride, and in this case we've added acetyl chloride. So you'll all be running different chlorides and different alcohols, acid chlorides, different alcohols, so that we're all making different esters. And I'll have a list of these posted so that you can decide which ones you would like to make. And one of the interesting things about esters is they usually have quite a pleasant smell, often described as fruity. And that's because a lot of the fruits, the smell comes from an ester compound. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the water flow here for the condensers, and we can watch that come in, that first condenser, and then we'll watch it come in on the second condenser, and then that will go off into the sink. Now, while we're letting our acid chloride cool down, we are measuring out our alcohol. And our alcohol of choice will go in our separatory funnel. We're going to cool that on ice before we put it in the separatory funnel. So we'll just probably have a beaker right here, and we'll add it to our ice bath, and then once we're done with that, we've cooled it a few minutes, we can add it in and then start the reaction by slowly letting the alcohol drip down in. Alright, so we've been cooling our reaction mixture, and we switched over to just a watch glass because the distance between the magnetic stirrer and the stir bar was a problem in actually getting it to stir, and the high walls of our ice bath were a problem. So since the flask is pretty small, we can just monitor it like this with the large watch glass. This way our reaction will stir itself. Next, we are going to start adding our alcohol in very slowly. So what we'll do, we'll just open the top of this, and then we will want to adjust this so that we don't have to sit here and babysit it the entire time while we're adding one little bit at a time. I'm just going to want to adjust this so it comes out pretty slowly. So just want to go slow, so that's just a little bit coming out, and you can just barely see it coming out there. And I want just a small little drip here. can see here how just a small amount is dripping down in, and we want to keep that on ice, and we'll keep this part stirring. And we'll do that until all of this has been added. So now the addition of the alcohol has finished, and so we'll wait a couple minutes. We'll remove the ice bath, let it sit for about another 10 minutes or so, then on the stirring. Then after that, we'll gently heat it. We'll probably set the thermal well to about just over 2, just to warm it up some. We don't actually want to boil this mixture. We just want to warm it up a little bit to speed up any residual reaction. And we'll come back when all of that is finished. So now we have started heating the reaction, and we'll just go ahead and leave the stir bar in there. We're not trying to boil this mixture, but if it does, that would kind of help act as a boiling chip. Esters have a higher volatility, so we don't want to boil it and potentially lose our product. Now, you may also notice that we've removed the separatory funnel, but in its place, I just put the stopper from the top of the separatory funnel right in the Chloride adapter. That was just something that you can do very quickly. The alternative is to actually remove the entire Chloride adapter and just put the condenser column directly onto our flask. But since we're doing this for not very long, we'll just go with this route. So after we let this heat for about 15 minutes, just on low, we're going to cool this down again, and then we'll quench any remaining acid chloride with ice cold water. So we're just going to slowly add in the water to quench the reaction. And again, we want to do this in the fume hood because when you're adding water to an acid chloride, you will generate a little bit of hydrochloric acid, and often that's in a vapor. And if we've done the other part of the reaction properly, most of that should be used up. But this is just to make sure that we don't have any residual in the flask. And we did cool this just because that would be an exothermic reaction. We just want to watch out for that. At this point, we should have 2 layers in the flask, and it's a little hard to see from this angle. But if you were to hold it up higher, you would see the 2 layers. We're going to do multiple washings. We'll just pipette out of here, or we could use our separatory funnel for this actually. That might be the better way. We'll transfer this into a sep funnel. We'll drain off the aqueous layer, and that will contain some of our byproducts of this reaction and any unreacted starting material. Our top layer is our product, and we're going to want to save that. And as always, please remember to save all of the layers as we go along, just in the off chance that you pick the wrong one at some point. Alright, so we've added our mixture into a separatory funnel, and we've determined that in this case, with the benzoyl chloride and isopropyl alcohol, the product is actually on the bottom layer. Now, this is something that we'll have to be careful about for this laboratory, because some of the esters, the product will be on the top layer, and some of them they'll be on the bottom layer. And And this is just because the density of esters is very close to the density of water. And so, again, be very careful about which layer you're saving, and I would save both, just in case we don't know which one it is. Now that we've added the sodium bicarbonate and we've done all the washings, we've placed this in a small beaker and we've added some drying agent to it, and we're just letting this layer dry. And make sure that you're trying to dry the organic layer. And I understand that both the aqueous layer and the organic layer look very similar in this lab, and in some cases the densities are very close to each other. So I would try to plan out which ester you intend to make, and then based off of that, try to find the density so that you'll know which layer to keep. So we'll let this dry, and then we're going to get some GC and IR of this material, and we're also going to get a mass on this so we can determine our yield.